All right, what's up, guys? What is going on? Welcome back to a brand new episode, and not just any episode. This is historic episode number 25
25, man.
of the
How
Opinion
has
City
time
podcast.
gone so fast, man?
Time has just been
Time's
flying by.
flying.
It is. So this is our historic episode 25. We are a professional wrestling podcast where we debate the hottest topics of the past, present, future, and beyond. We are your hosts. It's me. It's the HOST, Ralph Hindmarch.
And I am Parmesan Russell.
This podcast is for you, the listeners, and we love hearing your opinion. So please reach out to us via email at opinioncitypod@gmail.com.
All right, Ralph. We have a historic episode 25. We have a huge guest. Why don't you tell listeners who we have on tap for today?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for historic episode 25, we're bringing in a friend of mine from the world of professional wrestling, guy I met many years ago, and I figured, it's a good time as any to have a conversation because this guy is everywhere and does everything, and so we are bringing in entertainment journalist, critic, and podcaster. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Ben Silverio.
Hello, gentlemen.
The man of many hats.
Hey.
The
Yeah,
man of
it's
many
it's
hats.
weird finding the right hat for such a big head.
Yeah, I completely understand.
All right. So, for people who have no idea just who Ben Silverio is, why don't you give our listeners the dust jacket bio?
Oh man. Okay. So I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Right.
That is where I met Ralph. But I moved to Chicago and now Los Angeles in the hopes to, not to toot my own horn, but to become a little bit more prolific in my industry.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I moved in search of work because, Philadelphia is great and all, but it doesn't exactly have the same reputation, let's say, for entertainment journalism and the type of things that I'm getting into. So I went to Drexel to study screenwriting, and I spun that off into odd jobs here and there that led me to being a movie critic, an interviewer, a podcaster. I do a little bit of everything, and I somehow still have time to watch wrestling.
Yeah, especially these days.
Yeah, right. There's so much to watch,
which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on it at all because, back in the day, you only really had two choices.
Yep.
And now there's so much. And, not to say that ECW wasn't a choice back in the day, because it absolutely was, but only if you had the right channel and you were available late at night on a Saturday.
We've talked about this on the show before. I mean, I lived in Pennsylvania and I couldn't get ECW. Like when they had their first pay-per-view, somebody got a copy of the pay-per-view on VHS and we passed it around between all my friends because we just couldn't see ECW, which was a real shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it came in Philadelphia on channel 48.
Oh yeah.
And I had to be up past my bedtime to watch it.
What it was on like 2 a.m?
Something like that. Definitely past midnight.
Definitely late.
Well, and that was during the time where anybody that wasn't like the WWE, WWF product got like the weirdest time slots available.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Pretty weird time slots. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we really get into you a little bit, do you remember exactly when and how we met?
Oh man. I remember the how was at a Chikara show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I don't exactly remember either. When I started going to Chikara shows, my first ever Chikara show technically was one of their shows at the Reading Phillies, because I'd
Oh.
never seen them before, and I was dying to see King of Trios, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go to King of Trios this year, but they're at the Reading Phillies, so I feel like, that was like the show right before King of Trios, so I thought, well, I should go check that out. And I remember we met at one point during King of Trios. We met in line, and I believe, I don't even know if it was the first night. I think it might have been the second night. And so like we sat together the second night. But I remember going to the Wrestle Factory, and I met these, like, we didn't start sitting together at the Wrestle Factory right away. I met these weird guys, and not like, weird's a bad word. I don't know really what else to say.
I mean, they're
One of
wrestling fans. They're a little weird.
but
I
one
mean,
of
it
them
would be a
one of
little
them
weird to watch wrestling.
one of
Let's
them
be honest.
had like an old timey like vaudevillian's mustache, and he wore like like a flannel with the suspenders and like the high waisted jeans. And I met these guys in line, and I sat with them over on the bleacher side, which was the weird part about it, because I never would sit on the bleacher side. And I think I only sat with them for one show, and then like they said that they were like regulars at Chikara, and then I never saw them again.
Mm.
So after that, yeah, you and I sort of, started hanging out at Chikara shows, and the rest is pretty much history there.
Yeah, you even stayed over one night, after a late
Yes.
show, and so you
We
didn't have to make that drive back.
that was the double shot we did. Chikara was in the afternoon, and then House of Hardcore was at the ECW arena.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Wow.
And that was the night I met Matt Hardy's wife.
There you go.
Oh,
Because we had split up at one point, because you were the one area was like all these drunks. It was really kind of crazy, and you were like walking around the building, and I decided to sit in the seats because the drunks had all left. And it was right before the main event, which was Matt Hardy and I want to say, I think it was Tommy Dreamer and Matt Hardy. Because I mean, there were so many people in that match. Basically, almost the entire roster of ECW showed up. The entire broken Matt Hardy universe was there. The drone was flying through the building. But I was sitting on the end, and right before the match, this guy comes out and says, "Hey, can you slide down a seat? We need this seat on the end." So I'm like, "Sure, whatever. One seat's no big deal." So I move down, and right as Matt Hardy's entrance is starting, Rebby comes over and sits down, and she has not yet King Maxwell with her, sitting on her lap, and they watched like half the match from there, and then went to the back. But yeah, some crazy fun times.
I miss House of Hardcore. Tommy Dreamer put on a great show every time.
Absolutely. Great show all around. I was there for the Hardy Boys' last match before they got hired back by the WWE.
Oh, yeah,
that's really cool.
What a great match.
Yeah,
and they
nuts. Yeah,
and his promotion, especially when they ran in Philly, like the shows were always such big deals because they had like conventions during the day. They had like all these names. I mean, it really was like you got every dollar's worth out of the money you spent going to see one of their shows.
100%.
Oh yeah. If I'm not mistaken, he had the Young Bucks versus the Hardys one time.
Or I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and it was either against the Hardys or against the Dudleys, because there was this stretch of time where the Young Bucks were just facing every single great tag team ever on the Indies. And it was just such a great time to be in Philly for wrestling, because you know it was so close to everything. I remember going up to New England wrestling. Yeah, I guess it was in like a stadium,
right?
And it was the Hardys versus the Young Bucks, but also on that card was Kevin Steen versus Jerry the King Lawler in a pile driver match.
Oh wow! Jeez,
that's insane.
And that was when I met the Kingdom for the first time.
Nice. Oh, nice. Very cool.
And I complimented them on their heel antics and for really making me dislike them.
Yeah.
And Mike Bennett was very appreciative of that.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, so let's focus for a minute on your podcasting.
Indeed.
How did you get into podcasting, and what does podcasting look like for you these days?
All right. So back in college, my friend Zachary Shevich and I, we met because he was a freshman in the screenwriting program and he wanted to, branch out and meet some of the upperclassmen. And when he met me, we hit it off pretty quickly. And we started a radio show on Drexel's radio station called The Pretentious Film Majors. That turned into the only movie pop culture review show on the station. I don't think a lot of the other hosts liked us because we didn't play as much music as they did. But the radio show led to a podcast of our broadcasts. So I did that during my time at Drexel. And then when I graduated, I stuck around for a little bit longer while we were dabbling in TV because we were on Drexel's TV station for a little bit also.
Nice.
But it got to a point where I was just like, okay, I'm the old dude who keeps coming back. I'm like the Undertaker now. I just keep popping up randomly for things. And I was like, I got to do something different. So when I moved to Chicago, I met a really great group of people. They're some of the most awesome people I've ever met in my entire life. And one of them is named Erin Klein. She is one half of the podcast Not Your Demographic, which is another great wrestling podcast. They've kind of evolved into a podcasting network that includes a few different podcasts like X Treks, where Erin and her co-host Stunning Stella Cheeks introduce each other to Star Trek and X-Files, because Stella loves Star Trek, Erin loves X-Files. They each haven't gotten into the other fandom, so they're introducing each other to it. It's a really great podcast. But Erin and I had the common ground of time travel movies. And there was kind of a point where I think it was like right before the pandemic really like hit, where I was just like, I want an excuse to like do something creative with Erin. So we came up with this podcast idea called Time to Party, where we would, the first episode is coming up with a drinking, smoking game so that you have an excuse to watch or rewatch the movie. The second episode is the review. And the third episode is our edutainment episode, where we take a very shallow dive into something that sparked our interest in the movie that we wanted to learn more about. So we've talked about saddles. We've talked about CCTV. We've talked about Back to Future, the ride, which I absolutely love. And
have you ever been on the ride?
Oh, I used to go all the time in Universal Studios Hollywood.
Nice.
So the day that it was replaced was very sad for me.
Yeah.
Especially because the Simpsons ride, even back then when it was first introduced, didn't live up to the hype for me.
Right.
Because the Back to the Future ride was just so iconic.
So good.
I got to... Okay, I'm going to apologize right up front for all my name dropping. It's just
quite all right.
It's totally okay.
It's part of the job when I'm talking about, what I've done. But I got to talk to Tom Wilson, who played Biff. And we talked about the ride for the longest time during our interview. But the main guy that I got to talk to about the ride was Robert Zemeckis himself.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
That's cool. Yeah.
I was on the red carpet for Flight, that film with Denzel about the plane. And I had like a second left. I probably had one more question left. So I was just like, Back to the Future, the ride. How much did you love it? And he was just like,
Nice.
It was such a great experience.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So,
Very cool.
You've already said some of them, but what has been your favorite thing about doing the podcast?
Oh man. Well, during lockdown, it really gave me something to do, like we really got the ball moving at the peak time of uncertainty where we weren't really like seeing anyone, it was very
Right.
isolating. So it giving me that time to work with Aaron and our producer Ansel Birch, during this time where we weren't really seeing anyone, and I was living alone at the time, so other than doing work I wasn't really like talking to anyone that wasn't myself.
Right.
So
Right.
it was really great in that time, although our pilot episode we recorded socially distant in person, and in Chicago where
Interesting.
I lived at the time, it was close to the O'Hare airport,
Hmm.
so there was always planes flying overhead
A lot
and
of noise.
dogs barking, and
Hmm.
it wasn't the ideal situation for podcasting. We soon switched to recording digitally,
Nice.
um but uh having that time with my friends during a time where you weren't seeing anyone really, that was probably one of the best things to come out of it. But also it gives me a chance to flex my critical muscles,
Nice.
because it's not like I'm getting assigned a movie review every week, you know
Mhm.
um movie and entertainment journalism is such a competitive field. So finding the right place to that'll let me do a review, it doesn't always happen. So getting to talk about these movies that are so iconic, so obscure, so just fun, uh is like a highlight, of my week usually when we get to do it. I mean, we sometimes we'll record in batches, like we'll record for a stretch of like a month and then take a month off as things are releasing. But it's
Mhm.
still, I look forward to it all the time.
Speaking of movies, have you seen the Iron Claw trailer? And are you excited for the movie?
I am so excited to be really sad.
I kind of knew that was coming. I sort of knew that was coming, but yeah.
Oh yeah. It's funny because like there's this pocket of journalists, who love wrestling.
Yeah.
And so when things started to come out about this movie, we would all talk, and like online it would come up, and it would be like the non-wrestling people would get like excited because it's just like, oh, A24 doing
Yeah.
a biopic, and
Hmm.
Zac Efron, and oh cool, the dude from The Bear.
Yeah.
And then everyone who likes wrestling is just like, yo, you don't even know,
Yeah.
just wait.
It's gonna be a roller coaster. That's for sure. It's gonna be a roller coaster of emotions.
Oh yeah. And it's like you can question how dark it's going to get, but it's like if you know the story
Oh
and they
yeah.
like really stick with it,
Yeah.
it's going to
Yeah.
get real
It's
dark.
real dark. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's going to be a crazy movie, and I think it's interesting because it also kind of highlights this idea that there are so many people out there that are in the entertainment field that we never really realize are like actual wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Stephen Amell and Zac Efron and these kind of guys like have you just you don't know until you know, and then we see these these different projects that they're involved in, and it's like you find out these guys really do have like a love and respect for what wrestlers do.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites is Lin-Manuel Miranda. One of the biggest names in musical theater loves professional wrestling, and it makes a lot of sense
You're
because
kidding me. I had no idea.
No
And I'm
clue.
like the hugest Hamilton fan.
I had
Like
no
oh
idea.
yeah.
we listen to Hamilton in the car all the time.
Oh yeah, he was at WrestleMania a few times.
Oh wow.
That's so
So
cool.
I saw on his story, but like it's storytelling. Professional wrestling is storytelling, in the round.
Yeah.
So for a theater person to not appreciate pro wrestling is a bummer, and Lin-Manuel Miranda really gets it. Like I don't think I've ever read anything where he like openly talks about it, but I can just imagine what he would say about the things going on in wrestling.
Yeah.
I feel like he's been on a Raw as like a guest GM or something like many years ago. or something like that. He was
That would be
definitely
cool.
He was
I definitely feel like
probably
he was
in.
on the show at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So, we've talked a little bit about you being an entertainment journalist. So, what exactly does it take for one, such as yourself to become an entertainment journalist? Like, how does that happen?
It's a lot of luck. The old adage is it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
So, and much like wrestling, it's also about timing. When I was getting into okay, so I mean, I'm gonna date myself right now, but like when I graduated from Drexel in 2011, it was
Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm the
I
oldest one
know.
in the room, no matter what. So, 2011, you're dating yourself, please.
Yo, this is a very young industry. So whenever I say that, they're just like, wow, 2011.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Like, I remember talking to someone about random stuff, and Boys to Men came up, and they were like, who? And I was
Oh
just like,
God.
come on.
Yeah.
My wife and I saw Boys to Men in concert last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was DJ Jazzy Jeff still with them?
No.
I saw
Unfortunately not.
Sad face.
I saw them at Festival Pier with DJ Jazzy Jeff. And it was around 4th of July, and Philly always goes hard for 4th of July.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
of course they had to bring out those big names. But yeah, like I was saying, it's all about timing and who you know. So when I graduated in 2011, there was that period of uncertainty, because I was entering this job market that was like, uh, anytime you break into entertainment, it's difficult,
Mhm.
because it's almost this like mythical field. It's just like the mafia, it's like if you're in, you're in. So trying to break in is going to be the hard part. But through my radio show, through conventions, through the people that I networked with while I was in college, I had a friend who was a YouTuber and a musician, and he was like, hey, I know you're super into all this nerdy stuff. I have a friend who's looking for a writer at this website. And he's like, I know it's not like writing TV, but like maybe it'll lead to something more.
Mm.
So that's when I started writing at sciencefiction.com. And I stayed there for about 7 years. And I, learned a lot about the business, but I also got to like hone my craft and got to do some great event coverage and interviews and stuff. So, it was a roller coaster of a thing. And as long as you're grinding, once you're in, people will take notice. So it's up to now. All the places that I got to work for have been kind of by luck, and just like, oh hey, I'm gonna apply to work at this website that I used to read when I was in college. So
Right.
it's like, it was almost like reaching the WWE for me when I got to Slash Film,
Nice.
and
Mhm.
it was a really big deal for me because like I loved reading that website. I looked up to a lot of people that worked at that website. The person who
Mm.
started it, Peter Sharetta, is like a great dude who does all these things that I wanted to do. Like he goes to Disney parks on the reg and talks about them. He
Yeah.
talks to people like Adam F. Goldberg, who started the Goldbergs and is from the Philadelphia area. And
Right.
it's like what I basically did was I took these dudes that I took these people that I admired really, and I tried to be like, hey, how do I become those people? How do I
Mhm.
become Kevin Smith? How do I become Adam F. Goldberg?
Mhm.
And a lot of it was just like timing, who you know, and the grind.
Yeah.
And the grind gets a lot harder as you get older, but if you're having a good time doing it, it doesn't make it that hard. The things that make it hard are corporate greed and cutthroat people, like people who
Mhm.
will step on you to get up higher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of negativity, but there's a good amount of negativity surrounding anything in entertainment, really. Like but the people who persevere through it are the ones that you really see thriving, I think.
Right.
Hmm.
What has been your favorite moment as an entertainment journalist, and do you have a favorite interview that you've done?
Okay,
Mhm.
so I am Filipino American.
Okay.
Growing up, there was not a lot of representation for people like me. Like there weren't a ton of Asians in media when I was growing up, let alone Filipinos, let alone Filipino Americans. So, what the first time I saw someone who looked like me on a movie screen was Dante Bosco in the movie Hook. He played
Ooh.
Rufio,
Right.
Hmm.
and major character, lot of screen time, such a badass.
Yeah.
He was Peter Pan when Peter Pan went away, and that left a really huge impression on me as a kid, because it was just like, oh, I can be a part of this too. you know it was almost the same feeling I had when I first found out that Batista was Filipino. you
Oh
know
wow.
when
Mhm.
TJ Perkins won the Cruiserweight Classic,
Mhm.
like huge moments for Filipino Americans. When
Right.
Shotzi got signed finally after not getting through Tough Enough,
Yeah.
it's like these prominent Filipinos, I mean, not just in wrestling, but like in all over, are making an impact finally. But, in the days when that wasn't the case, I still had Dante Bosco as Rufio in the movie Hook. So when I started writing for Slash Film, uh, it was a very great environment for a
Mm.
writer, because like the editors there were all about, what is the writer interested in and excited
Mhm.
about to write, and what do they know about. So at the time, Dante Bosco was promoting his directorial debut called The Fabulous Filipino Brothers. It's a
Okay.
movie that he did with his brothers and like his family, about these Filipinos in California who are, living life and being ridiculous, but also ridiculously awesome. So I said on a whim, and I was just like, hey, can I review the movie and reach out to do interviews for the
Oh,
movie?
that's cool.
So my editor said yes. He was like, see what you can do, and we'll see what we can get out of it. So when I reached out, I specifically wanted to talk to Dante and his brother Dion, who was on the show City Guys, if you
Okay.
remember. So City Guys was also important to me because it was one of those after school sitcoms like Saved by the Bell and California Dreams,
Right.
but it was set in New York, so it was a bit more diverse. And Dante's brother Dion was on it as one of the main dudes. He was one
Hmm.
of the City Guys. So they never really talked about what ethnicity he was, but he inserted Filipino-ness whenever he could into the role. So he was the first Filipino American that I saw on TV. So the Bosco
Hmm.
family as a whole became very important to me. And even still to this day, because like they're like the first family of Filipinos in entertainment, kind of. Like they're
Mhm.
Dante and Dion's niece, Ella J, was in Birds of Prey.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, she was she was oh my god. Oh man, this is gonna
Uh-oh.
kill my cred because I
Uh-oh.
can't think of her name. Kath Kane, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah. She was the little kid. Um, but anyway, when I reached out to do interviews, both Dion and Dante said yes. And talking to Dante Bosco was just such a, I don't know, a full circle moment for me professionally, personally. We had a great conversation. We talked about how, how different it is for Filipinos and Asian Americans in the current landscape, how we're finally getting a chance to shine
Right.
after being in the shadows for so long. And it was just great to see him thriving, even outside of being Rufio, outside of being Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mhm.
He's still making an impact today, and he's one of those great people who like make sure that he brings up the whole scene with him in the things that he does.
Right.
So he's a great representative for the community, and getting to talk to him and getting to tell him how much he meant to me personally and professionally was a highlight of my career and my life.
Yeah, that had to have been just such a cool moment to not only be able to watch it and review it, but then talk to the person who was in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It,
it's really
I
cool.
I love doing stuff like that. Like a lot of people will be like, how do you talk to all these celebrities and like these important people in the industry that make these things that we love? And I'm just like, they're just people who do
Exactly.
cool stuff.
Exactly.
And so like if you talk to them like people, they'll tell you all the cool stuff.
Yeah, that's the same thing that I do to like with wrestlers. Like the one thing that you should know is that if you just treat them like they're normal people, they'll they'll talk to you. They'll hang out
Mhm.
with you. Just don't freak out. Just act like you're just friends that just haven't seen each other in years.
Oh yeah. I do have a story of where I met a wrestler recently where I may have lost my cool a little bit,
Oh,
because it's like
brace
I'm
yourself.
usually cool, calm, collected, professional, right?
Right.
Mhm.
But I met this wrestler at a bar and I was
Oh,
already kind of drunk. So
got it.
so it's
Yeah.
like, I can be a mark, with my friends and just like, oh my god, this dude is so great. But here I am in Las Vegas. Um, I went to the Nerd, which is a great bar in Old Vegas on Fremont Street,
Mhm.
that has a lot of wrestling events and a history with wrestlers. And I went to watch. I think it was Rampage because Orange Cassidy and Shibata were having a match.
Mm.
Right.
And I said to the bartender, I was just like, hey, are you guys showing the show tonight? And they were just like, oh, I don't think we are. Sorry. And I'm just like, oh, what the hell? So I was mad, but
Yeah.
I was still hanging out because it was a cool bar.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then who sits next to me but Willie Mack?
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Oh yeah.
That's gotta be cool.
So
Yeah.
uh once I notice that it's him, I'm just like, oh my god, you're Willie Mack. And normally I would just be like, hey man, big fan, appreciate everything you do. But after having a few drinks, it came out more like, oh my god, Willie Mack, I'm such a big fan. Let me buy you a drink. And he was just like, yeah, cool. So he let me talk his ear off and ask him questions, all off the record, of course. And it was
Of
just
Mhm.
course.
like,
Yeah.
we talked about Lucha Underground, we talked about AEW, we talked about what he was doing in Vegas and things like
Cool.
that. And he was just such a chill dude. But like, even while slightly intoxicated, if you talk to these people
Yeah.
like they're people,
Mhm.
you'll get, fun times out of it.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're going through. I had one of those moments recently, and Sean was there to witness the whole thing. But we had gone to a convention. It was the
Oh yeah.
Legends of
Oh
Hamburg,
yeah.
which, by the way, and I'm just throwing this out there because this is another thing Sean and I talked about this week off the air. Um, AXW currently runs shows in Hamburg, which Hamburg is completely historic in the world of
Yep.
professional wrestling. I mean,
Yeah.
so many big things have happened there, and after December, there will no longer be wrestling in that building.
Nope.
The owners of the
They're
building, which I
closed.
believe are a fire company, are renting it out 24/7 to someone else.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Wow.
So from what I know, they are basically loaning out that area for I think like a used car business that they're going to use that
Hmm.
lot for cars.
but we went to this convention there, and I'd known for weeks that who was going to be there, that I was excited to meet. And
Yep.
I, for personal reasons, for show reasons, I really needed to talk to and meet Dave LaGreca from Busted Open.
Yep.
And so we get there, and we're walking over towards the table, and we see he's there, and Sean's like, well, let's go. And I'm like, I'm gonna need a minute to compose myself here. I'm like, I gotta just take a minute and turn it down a notch because I'm like, I don't fanboy anymore. I mean, my wrestler count is almost at 500, and I've met everybody from indie guys just starting out all the way up to The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I don't really fanboy anymore. But this guy was very important in my sort of journey into doing all of this, and I lost it, and I'm like, I got to take a minute before I actually walk up to him and talk to him. So I know exactly what you're going through.
I think what was better was after, because so there were two people on our list, one for me and one for him. Mine was Monster Factory coach and owner Danny Cage. His was Dave LaGreca. So when he met Dave, he pitched him. Dave was all into it. Dave even said, which gave us shivers, that I think I've heard of your show before.
Because I handed him one of our business cards, and you could have knocked me over with a feather when he said that.
We froze. So after he did the pitch and everything went well, we both walked away. We're like, all right, let's go for a walk. Let's just do some laps. Let's walk it off. Let's just, because we were so excited about what had just happened. We had to walk it off. Let's go outside, go for a little walk. We'll come back in. Like we needed to take a break.
Yeah, like I was saying before about looking up to these people who are doing what you want to be doing. For you, I'm sure Dave was one of those people. And when I was first getting started out, one of the people that I looked up to was Joey Styles. Because he was running WWE.com at the time.
Right.
And I wanted to write for WWE.com. And so I went to Legends of the Ring. I believe it was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Yep.
I went and got my ECW figure of Joey Styles signed, but also I was trying to ask him about, the business and how to break in and, what you should do. And, he really gave me some advice that was similar to advice that Tommy Dreamer gave me, where they both really said, you should succeed somewhere else first so that it's impossible for professional wrestling to ignore you.
Wow.
So it took a really long time for me to finally circle back to wrestling. But when I was writing for Slash Film, the parent company, Static Media, also owns Wrestling Inc. They had recently acquired it when I joined. And so I was like, hey, I'm interested in writing about this also. Is there room on the team? And they were just like, yeah, you could do a couple shifts for them, every week. And then eventually, because things change in this industry so much, so quickly, I ended up writing for Wrestling Inc. full time for a little while. So,
That's cool.
I finally got to get my feet wet in the wrestling space instead of just wrestlers doing movies, wrestlers doing TV shows. Because I got to talk to Mick Foley about his Santa Claus documentary. I got to talk to Christopher Daniels about Marvel Comics. I got to talk to the Blue Meanie about Barbed Wire City, which is this awesome wrestling documentary. And so those came up so few and far between. But whenever I got to do stuff like that, it was, oh man, I remember reaching out once to try to interview Best Friends, Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, Trent Beretta, and Chris Statlander, because they were all on some Netflix game show.
Oh, okay.
But the things happened with that season where they split it up, and a lot of stuff behind the scenes were just it didn't work out. But until I got to Wrestling Inc., I didn't really have an excuse to reach out to these people about wrestling.
Right.
So I mean, I didn't get to do a ton interviews or anything for Wrestling Inc. But now that I've got it on my resume, hopefully next time I try to reach out to WWE or even AEW at this point, it'll look better for them, because look at some of the people that work in wrestling that didn't start in wrestling, like Billy Corgan and Freddie Prinze Jr. You have these people who succeeded in other places that became successful, that were just oh, hey, maybe we could do stuff with them and it'll work out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, we are a wrestling podcast, so let's talk a little bit about wrestling now.
Of course.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into professional wrestling, how you became a fan?
Oh, All right. So back in the day, my cousin Christopher was a fan. And, I was like his shadow when I was a kid, very young, so I liked what he liked. And uh, he wasn't a Hogan guy. So I was never a Hogan guy. And then years later, I realized why I wasn't really a Hogan guy, because I also wasn't a John Cena guy. I also
Okay.
wasn't a Superman guy. I
Mhm.
never liked these guys that were too strong, that were too invulnerable, that always won.
Right.
I liked characters that really had flaws.
Yeah.
Um, which would explain why my first favorite wrestler was the Ultimate Warrior. Um,
Oh.
so a lot of his
Mhm.
flaws came later in life, but it's
Yeah.
not like he
Mhm.
always won in WWE. Like, I mean, yeah, he had great runs as champions multiple times, but it's
Mhm.
like he was so out there, and not your average hero type character, that
Right.
I think that's what drew me to him, in addition to my cousin being a big fan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, before I got to grow older and like really consume wrestling with him, my cousin passed away. And
Mm.
so part of my fandom
Yeah.
is like keeping his fandom alive,
Right.
almost like Charlotte Flair and her brother, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, it took me a little while to really get back into wrestling, because like I
Mhm.
was still young, I wasn't really controlling what I was watching,
Right.
and it was mostly Disney movies, cartoons, superheroes,
Mhm.
things like that. But when the Attitude Era started to take off, was really when I got back into wrestling, and kind of stayed in it ever since. And
Yeah.
I've had these ebbs and flows of just like, oh, am I getting burnt out on this? Is this getting kind of too ridiculous? But am I getting made fun of too much for watching wrestling?
Right.
but
Sure.
but I still stuck with it, because it even when I was coming up in high school trying to decide like what I wanted to do with life. It was like, you know I appreciated it as a kid because it was almost like superheroes come to life, and then I appreciated it as I got older because it was a different form of storytelling, you
Right.
know
Mhm.
and I really loved that aspect about it. And once I learned that they had writers, I was just like, I can be one of those writers.
Right.
I could be that Brian Gewirtz telling The Rock what to say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not something that I've gotten to do yet, but that's still one of my career goals, is to be on a creative team of a wrestling promotion.
Sure.
But yeah, as I got older, fandom evolved into just like loving the spectacle. It's like,
Yeah.
I almost compare it to whenever I go to Disneyland, because I'll admit it, I'm a Disney adult and I don't give a shit. Oh, sorry. I don't
Nope.
give a
You're
crap.
fine.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
fine.
You're good.
Sorry, gotta stay PG,
You're fine. It's all good.
Yeah. It's the PG era here.
Yeah, exactly. It's the PG era.
But yeah, whenever I go to Disneyland, I get this, childlike feeling of joy and wonder, because even though
Yeah.
I know how some of these things work, I'm familiar with the protocols and the different things that,
Mhm.
make the rides tick and things like that. Even though I know what's happening in real life,
Yeah.
the fantasy kind of takes over.
Right.
So I kind of get that feeling to a smaller degree when I go to wrestling shows and when I watch
Mhm.
wrestling,
Mhm.
and it takes me back to that time where I just, want that fight between good and evil, and
Yeah.
you want the hero to prevail. And you know it's become a bit of a gray area, because there are so many anti-heroes, and like, obviously there are heels that are very good at wrestling that you want to respect and everything. But
Yeah.
I think that's why I gravitated to Chikara so much also, because it was even more fun to cheer the good guys and boo the bad guys,
Yeah.
and stay in that PG to G area where you can
Mhm.
enjoy
Yeah.
the art form
Yeah.
in such a pure way almost.
Right. And as a former resident of Philly and a fan of Chikara, what do you think made the Chikara experience so special?
Man. Okay, so I gotta start with um
Oh, this one's gonna hurt. I gotta say, this conversation is gonna hurt, and
I
I'm the
know.
one who wanted to talk about it, but this is gonna hurt.
I so first I gotta say that as I grew older, I learned to support wrestlers, not promotions.
Right.
You know,
Mm.
because
Absolutely.
as the whole tribalism thing became more prominent, it became more ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it's just like if one place is thriving, that's making other places thrive, and that's good for everybody. So,
Exactly.
you know, I'll go places to support some of my favorite wrestlers that, you know, maybe they're not the greatest promotions, maybe they're not the most well put together productions, but it's like
Mhm.
if you're watching the right people, it can still be a good time. In Chicago, I basically the first time that I met the majority of my friends in Chicago, we went to the show, I believe it was Blitzkrieg Pro. It was
Mhm.
literally in a high school gym. And practically the entire roster of Lucha Underground was there, and it was nuts. But on the other side of the curtain, there was a flea market,
Oh
basically.
wow.
Oh,
Basically, it was a
wow.
flea market.
That's fantastic.
So seeing Taya Valkyrie and you know, all of these people that you would see on TV. I even think Willie Mack might have been on that card. But
You know?
I think Ray Phoenix might have been there too. And it was just like
Mhm.
insane how this great talent in the ring was at this kind of crappy environment. And I can kind of shit on Blitzkrieg Pro because they're not really a thing anymore. But like uh but with Shikara, you know, as much as I'll condemn what it turned into, what it started as, uh, you know, was a comic book come to life. And I
Right.
really appreciated the seasons that they had because it made it easier for fans to jump in at any point, kind of like
Yeah.
Mhm.
comics. You know,
Yeah.
it gave you a natural jumping in point that a lot of wrestling promotions wouldn't do because there's no off season.
Right.
And even though there's technically not an off, there wasn't technically an off season for Chikara either. Like the way that they presented their stories made it very accessible for people of all ages, gave
Mhm.
something for everyone to enjoy, and it really created their own universe in this larger world of wrestling that was also for a time very accepting, very nurturing, you know, of a ton of different aspects. You know, if you really loved technical style wrestling, it was there. If you loved lucha libre, it was there. If you
Mhm.
liked old school catch as catch can British style wrestling, that was
Mhm.
there.
Yep.
You know, like
Yep.
it had everything. And their roster was so diverse. And then the fact that it was a Philadelphia based company really, you know, did something for me because it's like, oh, who did
Mhm.
Pennsylvania really have in pro wrestling other than Bruno and Kurt Angle,
Right.
you know, back then.
Mhm.
Right.
So seeing something thrive in Philadelphia, you know, especially in the absence of like an ECW, but like Chikara, for as different as it was from ECW, was very similar in that the fans kind of became family with the performers. They
Right.
were so easily accessible to everyone. Someone that I got to interview was Bryce Remsburg,
Mhm.
Nice.
and he's just such a
Great guy.
cool, down to earth dude.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, and after talking to him, it made it easier to just talk to other people like Jervis Cottonbelly. I'm a big fan of
Yes.
Jervis Cottonbelly.
Mhm.
He was like I mean, he was literally and figuratively the warm hug of professional wrestling when he was active, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
It
Yeah.
was so wholesome whenever you got to see a Jervis Cottonbelly match. And again, that Disneyland feeling.
Mhm.
Jervis brought it all the time. So then
Mhm.
when he became, I mean, not became, but when the performer also was Kevin Condren, and like this is something I feel
Mhm.
comfortable saying because Kevin himself has come out on
Sure.
social media and has said, "Oh, I'm
Sure.
Jervis," because as much as I know about kayfabe and like who's under masks and stuff, I don't want to
Mhm.
like blow up anyone's spot and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Sure,
hey,
sure.
Yeah, of course,
guess
of
who
course.
this member of the colony was?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and
You
and
know?
don't do it on our show. No.
Yeah, I definitely won't
No,
because
no, I understand.
kayfabe sometimes is important.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, but for Kevin to be such a despicable heel, makes
Mm.
me appreciate his abilities even more
Right.
because Chikara really gives you an appreciation for the performer as well because they gave opportunities to people when no one knew who these people were.
Yeah.
Like back in the late 2000s, if people were like Orange Cassidy who,
Yeah, right.
like
Yeah.
the Gentleman's Club, what is this thing?
Oh, yeah.
What a throwback that is.
Like they
Yeah.
come with a swamp monster. um but like I also got to see it with Eddie Kingston, like
Mhm.
everyone loves Eddie Kingston
Mm.
now. But watching him in Chikara being this, rough and gruff character that he was on the indies, but just like softened the edges a little bit,
Mhm.
kind of made him be more creative about how he's a villain.
Right.
Because I know my friends in Chicago deeply disliked Eddie Kingston when he was at AAW, when he was always there with Homicide, and they were, being these very, let's say, edgy characters,
Yeah.
But Eddie was a different kind of edgy in Chikara, and it almost like how people embrace MJF now, not me, but some people embrace him now as their scumbag. In Chikara, Eddie was our, a-hole.
Yeah.
And then he really
Yeah.
came to become like a champion in both senses of the word,
Right.
in all senses
Mhm.
of the word for Chikara. So just the fact that Chikara could bring all of this out in the wrestlers, in the community, it made it such a magical place for a little while. And it's fun to look back on those good times that have unfortunately been tainted by some bad times. But
Right.
Mhm.
it's great to see some of those performers thriving. Orange Cassidy is one of the biggest names in pro wrestling right now,
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
saw him at the most at a garage in Northeast Philly.
And
Right.
what really, I think one of the things that really stands out for me about the whole Chikara experience, and I think I see a lot more of it now than I did then, but you look at the quality of wrestling at every one of those Chikara shows. And when you go to other places, and I'm not saying everybody, because there are really, great places out there that are really preparing people the right way, and you see the talent. But, at the time, you looked at everybody that was coming out of the Wrestle Factory, and you just looked at the level of talent as compared to other companies that were training guys. And, Chikara was so much, sort of above and beyond. The talent was just so incredible.
To quote the Brawling Brutes, banger after banger after banger out of the
Absolutely.
Wrestle
Mhm.
Factory,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Wheeler Yuta,
Mhm.
who
Oh,
thought
yeah.
that he was gonna be what he is now?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, so many people in Chikara are left
Mhm.
to still enter that showcase,
Right.
and they absolutely can. And I hope that the wrestling world sees more of the talented people, like, I mean, Edith Surreal
Oh,
and
so good.
Lash LaRue,
Yep.
and like there's still a ton of people who have yet to get their flowers from
Yeah.
Chikara that absolutely should. The fact that Sydney Bacabella isn't on television
Huh.
is
I know,
wild.
right? he's
You know,
he's a character for sure. I
Oh,
think he would be amazing on national TV. Amazing.
yeah,
yep.
Sydney is
So
just
hopefully his time comes.
unreal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's one
it
of those people
was.
that's fun to hate.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, talking about Chikara, what are some of your personal favorites as far as Chikara goes? And that can be wrestlers, shows, moments. What are some things that really kind of stick out for you as your personal favorites?
Who? So let's see. Again, prefacing this by I don't condone the terrible actions of people
Mm-hmm.
involved
Sure.
and what happened. But
Absolutely.
one of the greatest technical matches that I saw, and I know that Ralph is gonna love hearing this from my mouth.
I'm pretty
Uh,
sure. I'm pretty sure I know which one you're going to bring up too. But go ahead. Oh,
was such a good match.
we lost you
As
for a
much as
minute
I
there.
What, what was the match?
sorry.
Yeah, we
Oh,
lost you for a minute there.
Yeah,
yeah.
it was Zack Sabre Jr. versus Juan Francisco de
There you
Coronado.
go. He knew his face.
Listen,
dropped
yesterday I was telling my wife about that match,
There you go.
and my wife was like, because she saw my Coronado Clutch poster in the background,
There it is.
and she asked me what the Coronado Clutch was, and so I told her, I pulled it up on YouTube and I showed her, and I'm like, he used that to beat Zack Sabre Jr., who was considered to be like, if not the best, one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he did it
Yeah.
right in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
Such a good match. People
It
don't
was-
give Juan enough credit for like his title run and how good that was. His match with Fire Ant in North Carolina. Like they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
give him enough credit for how good that run really was.
Yeah, and you know, that match with Zack Sabre Jr. really proved how far he came at the time. You know, it was a technical masterpiece, and being there in the building to watch it unfold was a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah,
You know, because it's like
Mhm.
you don't want to give Juan credit at the time, especially because you know being such a hated heel, but
Right.
the fact that he was standing toe to toe with Zack Sabre Jr., you know, was just magical to watch.
Yeah.
You know, watching Kimberly become the grand champion after
yeah.
so much struggle and strife, but the fact that, you know, a woman got to be the face of the company that
Mhm.
was carrying a belt that was predominantly carried by men. That was a big
Mhm.
deal.
Yeah.
You know, that was super great to see. But then, you know, just like you mentioned Fire Ant, like one of the things that stands out to me was Fire Ant jumping off of the scaffolding in the ECW arena.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Like little moments, you know, but like I think one of the top moments that stands out to me in my history with Chikara was when I was very early in my fandom and didn't really know what it was. One of my first events was at the Easton Funplex.
Oh, okay.
And to see Archibald Peck come out in a DeLorean, you know, with me being such a
Yes.
Back to the Future and time travel fan,
Yeah.
it hooked me immediately.
Yeah, Archibald Peck was probably next to Juan. Archibald Peck was probably my favorite. Just everything he did was amazing. He was the definition of a character. Everything he did was so good.
And what a great mind for professional wrestling. Like, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Archie's friend RD Evans shared a
Mhm.
lot of his philosophies about wrestling. So to see him advance to places like WWE
Mhm.
and Impact, you know,
Yeah.
it says a lot about what he learned, what Chikara taught him, and you
Mhm.
know, the things that really make a modern wrestling show stand out.
All you've got to do is watch Orange Cassidy and RD Evans from American Rana 19,
Oh
and
man.
yeah.
you'll know everything you need to know, because it's just a beautiful example of, you know, like the kind of things we saw for years.
Right.
Oh man, the sunglasses spot.
Yep.
He came up on
So
Twitter
good.
the other day, and I just loved Orange pulling out all the sunglasses.
Yep. Yeah. So good.
And Bryce Remsburg was just as much a part of that as they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His mind for just good old fashioned fun is great to see in wrestling, because like for a little while I was going through this phase where or not really a phase, it was more of a transition, because like as a kid I really loved ECW and the style of deathmatch wrestling that
Right.
GCW still does. But as I got older, it's just like, hey, I don't need to see an unprotected chair shot anymore. I don't
Yeah.
need to see buckets of blood. I want to see these performers have long careers.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, I can accept that as part of like a long, grueling feud. I don't want to see it on the regular anymore.
Yeah.
So for Chikara to introduce this more comedic style, even though the wrestling was very sound, still the ring acumen was still top tier. You can laugh and have a good time.
Yeah.
It's basically what Colt Cabana embodies. Somebody
Mhm.
that yeah, he's gotten his flowers for being revolutionary in pro wrestling in a number of ways,
Mhm.
including podcasts, because
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
without him,
Mhm.
I don't think there would be this many podcasts,
No.
for better or worse. But it's like he would even inspire people outside of the wrestling space. I mean,
Right.
when Mark Maron talked to Colt Cabana, these titans of podcasting, even though they
Yeah.
were from such different worlds, there was a lot of carryover. So like to be a good wrestler but also be entertaining
Mhm.
in fun and even safe ways, it really shows the spectrum of a performer, really.
Yeah.
Not trying to put down
Yeah.
deathmatch wrestling or anything,
No.
because
No.
that stuff can still
No,
be
no.
very good.
Yeah.
Sure. I have to ask this, because talking about favorite Chikara things, because this is one of my favorites, and I just need to know what your feelings are on it, because I miss it like crazy. What did you think of the Challenge of the Immortals?
Oh man, it was such a unique concept.
Because a
It
lot of
was
fans crapped on it, and a lot of fans weren't big fans of it, but to me, that whole season was just it felt like so much more.
Yeah, because it
Right.
really added to the sports part of sports entertainment. Like it was a very unique idea. I really liked trying it out. It needed some tweaks probably, but like I think it really created for some interesting matchups that you wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to break some eggs to make an omelet, right? So it's
Exactly.
Mhm.
like I think had it had the chance to continue longer, it
Mhm.
would have been a really great concept
Yeah.
that could have
Because
gotten taken over into other
we never
places.
oh sure, we never did for sure find out who delivered the loaded elbow pad.
Yeah.
Right?
We never got that answer.
It
So
will be a
many
mystery
hanging
forever.
threads.
Yep.
Yes,
It will forever
we
be a
could
mystery.
do a whole show about hanging threads from Chikara.
Yes.
Oh man.
But
But like I know this wasn't a Chikara memory because it happened afterwards, but listening to your episode with Avery Good
mhm,
talking about his final match with Mr. Touchdown,
Yeah.
seeing that finally culminate
mhm.
was so good and so satisfying,
Mhm.
yet really heartbreaking for me
Yeah.
because I wasn't there in person. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was there for so many of Dasher Hatfield's landmark moments. I
Mhm.
was in Logan Square Auditorium when Boomer unmasked Dasher. I
Mhm.
Yeah.
was at WrestleMania weekend. I had the White Eagle, I guess, with
Mhm.
the ladder match.
Yeah.
That
Like
I still, to this day, I told Avery this on the show, and I still stand firm. Best ladder match I've ever seen.
it was
Amazing
just,
match.
oh
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
5 stars across the board.
Mhm.
It was nuts, and it was definitely not the type of thing that you normally saw at Chikara. So for them to really like push the boundaries of the universe that they built was just
Mhm.
incredible. And I
Yeah.
mean, I got to see Avery Good at uh Beyond Wrestling does this show on the beach, and
Oh.
it's
Mhm.
great.
Okay.
And when I saw it, it was called Borscht at the Beach. because
Nice.
Mark Slemovich was
Love
on the
that.
show.
Yes,
And
I'm
the
aware
whole
of this.
reason I went was because it was Masha versus Ali Catch. And they were fighting in the ocean and throwing sand at each other. And it was great.
That's
Yeah.
great.
But Avery Good was also on the show with Big Dan Champion. And I was just
Yeah.
like, I got to go talk to Avery. So I told him that I was there for all of these great moments. And he was just like, you've really been there for the greatest hits of my career. And I was just like, yeah. And then when it got to that match with Mr. Touchdown at the end there, I was so sad that I couldn't be there. Because it looked like such a electric environment.
Right.
I had tickets for that show, and unfortunate circumstances caused me not to be able to go. But yeah, it was and just hearing the whole, kind of behind the scenes stories as to how they put all that together and how that came about. It made it so much more special, because I mean, there's not a person anywhere that can tell you that they weren't shocked when Touchdown walked out.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Great moment. And I mean, Mark Angelo Setti is somebody that could have succeeded on televised wrestling.
Mhm.
So I mean, like, I'm sure he got out of it for his own reasons, but it's like, if he got to be at NXT during its heyday, if he got to be, on that period where all those indie guys were coming into AEW, I think he could have done something really interesting. But our paths take us different ways, right?
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
Of course. Speaking of paths, let's step away from wrestling for a little bit, because I know you've been to multiple Comic-Cons.
Oh, yeah.
Basically the holy grail for nerd culture. Do your best to tell us what the Comic-Con experiences was like for you.
Oh, man. So, yeah, like you said, I've been to so many Comic-Cons, but Comic-Con, like capital C's Comic-Con, which is San Diego Comic-Con. It really is the mecca of nerd culture. But I can't really say that anymore, because now nerd culture is pop culture.
Yeah, right.
So it's become this phenomena, this holy land, so to speak. So it's interesting because I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con as a professional. I've only gone as a fan, and it's long story, but I was supposed to go this year as a professional, but things happen, and it's fine. I get it, but one of my earliest experiences at San Diego Comic-Con was the shift into basically what people think about when they think of Comic-Con now, because it was the year that Twilight first came to San Diego Comic-Con, and that's when everything changed.
Right.
So back in the day, you used to be able to get a ticket on Saturday and walk right in. But because of Twilight, people were camping out for Hall H and not leaving once they got in there. So it made it really difficult for people to get into like some of the other panels and stuff. And so they had to really change up the way that they were doing things. And it carried over even in today. This past year, you could see the lines stretching for days. It's a lot to take in, because it's almost sensory overload. Because at a normal convention, you get all of these vendors, all of these celebrities, all of these creators in one place. There's going to be a lot going on. But because of the sheer size of San Diego Comic-Con, it's almost overwhelming, even to the most veteran con goer.
Right.
So as much as it can be like anxiety inducing, it's also just wild, some of the things that can happen. Like one year, I believe it was the year that Thor came out, they had the throne of Odin on the floor.
Okay.
And Stan Lee was there, sitting on the throne.
Wow. That's awesome.
So when I was walking by the Marvel booth, they were escorting him off the throne and like into whatever his next thing was. So I was just caught up in a sea of people trying to like talk to Stan Lee.
Right.
And I had a very passing moment of just being like, Stan, thank you. And then he kept
Yes.
going, and
Yeah.
That's all they want. That's all celebs want is they don't want like the whole free. They just want to nod and like that's it. Just hey, what's up? Like
yeah. And with Stan specifically, I had 3 instances where I got to talk to Stan Lee. That was one of them
nice.
very quickly,
Mhm.
Another one, thanks to a good friend, I got a photo op with Stan Lee at Wizard World Philly during that
Yeah.
last stint of cons that he was doing.
Mhm.
And one of my most prized possessions, having this picture with Stan Lee, because without
Yeah.
him and his creations, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. But
Sure.
the most interesting one was at Baltimore Comic Con during the Harvey Awards, when I was there with my team of people, covering the convention.
Yeah.
And John Romita Jr. was getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Stanley was the one presenting it to him.
Cool.
So when they were done coming off stage, I was there at the foot of the steps, and I was just like, and just all this stuff. But then, unbeknownst to me, his security detail was behind me, and
Oh.
they almost tackled me
Oh
Oh,
for
jeez.
wow.
stopping Stan.
Oh
And
Jeez.
so
no.
my cameraman told me much later. He was like, "Yeah, they were getting ready to pounce, but Stan waved them off."
Thank
And
God
I'm
for
just like,
Stan.
"Oh, that's great."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank God for
exactly.
Stan.
So the thing after I got to tell him how much he meant to me, how much his work meant to me, and things, he very simply just said, "As it should be." So it's like
Nice.
Stan
So
for
humble.
So
exactly.
yeah, right.
I would
It was
expect nothing
always an
less, though.
experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was always an experience getting to talk to someone like Stanley.
Yeah.
But
Right. All right.
yeah, Comic Con is just this. I keep going back to this magical place. It's
Yeah, right. No,
uh
it makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
So, Ralph, we have a bunch of quick fire questions and then one big one at the end. Why don't we hit him with the 1-2 punch real quick before we get to our break?
All right. So we're gonna throw a couple at you quick here.
Okay.
So first off, knowing what we know about you, having lived in Philly, Chicago, and now LA, of course, all great wrestling cities, all great, entertainment cities. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I'm a little biased because I was born there, but
Sure.
Philadelphia is
Right.
the birthplace of extreme.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to top a wrestling crowd in Philadelphia.
Right.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had great experiences in Chicago. I've been to some great shows run by not great people in LA. But
Right.
I've also been to some great shows run by great people in LA too. And like
Mhm.
nothing compares to, I mean, I go back to House of Hardcore often. But even here's a testament to Philadelphia wrestling fandom. I believe it was a CZW show
Okay.
during a blizzard,
Ooh.
and the Young Bucks were on the card, and they had already made it from California,
Mhm.
but some of the other performers didn't make it.
Right.
So they just called in a bunch of people who were in the city to like fill the spots on the card.
That's
Mhm.
cool.
And one of the people that came in was Chuck Taylor. Another person doing big things right now, actually, Joe Gacy,
Oh
I
wow.
believe,
Yeah.
was the CZW Wired champion,
Mhm.
and he faced Speedball Mike Bailey prior
Oh,
to his
so good.
ban from the US.
So
Yeah.
good.
And the fact that the crowd was still out in full force, even though there was a blizzard,
Mhm.
to support these people who fought tooth and nail to get there for them,
Yeah.
Philadelphia may be a tough town, and I know a lot of people will denounce Philadelphia sports fandom for all the things that have happened in our history,
Right.
but there's just no passion like a Philadelphia wrestling
Yeah,
fan.
they're such a
Sure.
hot crowd for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
And I mean, you'll see it in AEW
Yeah.
when freaking Okada shows up.
Yeah. Like, what the hell, man? What the hell?
Insane.
Yeah.
All right.
It-
So I got 2 loaded gun questions for you.
Uh-oh. Okay, yes, Billy Gunn is my favorite smoking gun.
No.
Oh,
No.
man.
So,
Bart will be disappointed.
yeah, right.
Don't tell him, he'll knock me out.
Yes.
If you had a gun to your head, what is your single favorite movie and favorite all-time wrestler?
Oh my god.
It's going to get worse, so don't worry.
Jeez.
If you think this one's bad.
All-time favorite movie and wrestler.
Mm,
Okay, I'll start with wrestler.
Okay.
I think it has to be Stone Cold Steve Austin
Okay.
because
Nice.
he, for being such a blue collar working man character,
mhm.
he found a way to resonate with all demographics, all
Right.
backgrounds,
Yeah.
all walks of life,
Yep.
because we all deal with shitty bosses.
Yep.
And the system
That's a
is
fact.
always trying to keep us down.
Yep.
hmm
And he was a person who overcame that time and again. And I think that's why it hurts so much to see him side with the corporation when that
Right.
happened. You know, like
yeah. Yeah.
everything he did warranted the huge emotion that came with it.
hmm
So the fact that he kept it up for so long in so many iterations, and you know, he never claims to be the best technical wrestler in the world,
Right.
but the fact that he can do so much with his arsenal of tricks
Yeah.
Mhm.
is a true testament to how great a performer he really is.
Correct.
Mhm.
You know, you could put him in the ring with anybody and he can make it work. I
Yeah.
mean, from one of my oldest memories that I think I can draw from wrestling is when he said, "You put an S in front of Hitman, and that's how I really feel about you."
That's a great promo. That's a great promo.
What a
Yeah.
great promo.
Oh,
Right.
And even up until his match with Kevin Owens, where you know he couldn't do the same stuff that he used to do, but he
Mhm.
still brought it
Yeah. a
with
great
such
match.
vigor.
Great
You know,
match. Yeah.
great match. Probably not the most technically sound match ever, but it was still
But
pulled people in and
It
told
was
them
the-
to pay attention.
it was the spectacle we wanted.
Yep.
100%. And from somebody that could still deliver it. You know, it
Mhm.
like all the respect in the world to Ric Flair because he's earned it. But watching his last match
Was so sad.
was so sad.
Yeah.
It
It's
was
just
okay.
so sad.
So,
Oh man,
favorite
movie.
Yeah. Here's the tough
Jeez.
one.
Yeah, here's a tough one.
It's because, you know, I'll typically say my favorite movie from a category, you know, like my favorite comedy, my favorite animated, my favorite technical movie, you know, because like there's a lot of great movies out there. But then when it comes down to personal favorites, oh man, there are so many that just like came rushing to my head. You know what? I'm gonna go with Mallrats.
Ooh,
Excellent
that's
choice.
a great one.
Excellent
Great
choice.
one.
Because almost similar to Stone Cold Steve Austin, I was seen in a way that I felt that I hadn't been seen before until I saw Mallrats. You know,
Right.
as much as most people from Pennsylvania could agree, New Jersey sucks. But
Sean thanks you for that.
Have some respect for Jersey.
but you know, I do respect Kevin Smith and the way he reps for his hometown,
Right.
and the
That's
whole
right.
mall going experience, because there's nothing like it anymore. Malls are not the same.
No.
No.
You know, kids aren't experiencing malls the way that we experience malls.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Smith kind of captured that to an extreme. You know,
Mhm.
he even included the Dirt Mall. I remember going to the Penn Sock and Mart and doing exactly what they did, and like,
Yep.
look, like that's where I found some of like my favorite comics and some of my favorite wrestling toys was at the Penn
Yeah.
Sock and Mart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the fact that that's a bygone era, the fact that it was such a huge part of my childhood, and the fact that it was probably the Kevin Smith movie that was just like, yeah, you know, he's saying all the stuff that I would normally be saying to my friends. And if this is how you can make a movie, I can make movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it really
Yeah.
inspired me to, you know, my first day on the job at sciencefiction.com was taking part in the press junket for Comic Book Men.
Okay.
So it was the 4 guys on the show and
Mhm.
Kevin. And so that was the first time I got to interview Kevin Smith. I've gotten to speak to him and interview him for work a number of times afterwards. But
That's really cool.
after the interview, I went up to him and I was just like, "Excuse me, Kevin, I just wanted to thank you, you know, because seeing your work, you know, especially as a big guy from the East Coast who was nerdy, you
Yeah.
know, it really inspired me. Along with John Hughes and Quentin Tarantino, you really inspired me to want to tell stories in a visual medium. So I want to thank you for that." And you know, in typical Kevin Smith fashion, he talked to me for 20 minutes about how cool that
Nice.
was.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of my fellow journalists actually caught that moment and talked about it in their write-up of the event, you know,
That's
talking
cool.
about how cool Kevin is and how he'll spend the time, you know, 20 minutes talking to a fan about how great it is that we get to do these things.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, for
That's
the
awesome.
impact that Kevin Smith had on my life, for the representation of the mall,
Yeah.
I think Mallrats has to be it.
Yeah.
Excellent choice. All
All
right.
right.
So now we got one
This
last one for you, and
is-
this is the really tough one.
I was
Okay.
gonna say
This
this is a show called Opinion City, and you know we do opinions here. So Ralph has a loaded opinion question for you before we go to break.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So I understand favorite movies. I understand bias. I understand all these things. But in your professional opinion as a critic, which is the best film series of these 4? Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, or Rocky?
Back to the Future, hands down.
Oh, not
Hands
even hesitation.
down.
No hesitation.
Not
just
even
like
hesitation.
Yes.
And what makes that so much better than everyone else?
Okay. Structurally,
Mhm.
we'll start there.
Okay.
So every movie, every story has a 3-act structure.
Hmm.
And each one of the Back to the Future movies has that 3-act structure in the story that they're telling in the movie. But the trilogy itself is this great example of a 3-act structure in a trilogy.
Mhm.
Because in each movie acting as that, you know, that act, it I don't want to say that things are perfect, but like it was kind of perfect. You know,
yeah.
you learn what you need to learn about these characters, you see how they grow, and you see what they take out of this experience.
Mhm.
Marty McFly and Doc Brown are just these great characters. So you want to follow them into whatever they're doing. And then when a wrench is thrown into their plans, seeing them react to it, it is where the fun lies. And I mean, part of that is how good the writing was, how good the directing was, how good the special effects were, you know, like a lot of it still holds up. But
Mhm.
Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd were just acting their asses off
Yeah.
Mhm.
for the
Yes.
entire time.
Yep.
Even the third one, which a lot of people will kind of shit on, but I think Back to the Future 3 is just as strong as the other 2.
Right.
Mhm.
Because you always get that thing in trilogies where it's just like the first one's really great, and then the second one, and then maybe the third one.
Mhm.
But for me, Back to the Future is consistently good across the board for a
Right. Mhm.
number of different reasons. And the other franchises that you mentioned, are all great in their own
Mhm.
ways.
Sure.
But there's just something about Back to the Future that like gives you hope. You
Mhm.
know, the future isn't written yet. You know,
Sure.
you can still change your world, right?
Right.
It's a really great message that people need to internalize, and and I think becoming a Back to the Future fan and growing with the movie has this is going to sound so corny, but it's almost kind of made me a better person,
Yeah.
Mm,
and
sure.
I had the immense honor and privilege to meet Christopher Lloyd at New York
That's
Comic Con.
awesome.
Mm,
So
Really cool.
Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox were both at this New York Comic Con to do like a reunion panel
mhm.
and meet fans and stuff. But because of Michael's condition, he couldn't really meet and greet with everyone that bought an autograph ticket. It was
Right.
almost like an assembly line. But the thing that
Mm.
he does is that whenever he does these appearances, he donates the money to the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
Yeah.
So he's doing it for a good cause. So
Sure.
I got some Funko Pops signed by both of them, and
Nice.
like getting to talk to Christopher Lloyd, who, like Eddie Kingston, has this spectrum of loving and hating, depending on where he is, depending on what promotion he's performing for. So,
Right.
as much as I got to thank him for the incredible portrayal of Doc Brown, I also thanked him for scaring the living hell out of me as a kid from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, that is my favorite movie. I have two. I'm tied. It's that one and Almost Famous.
Oh, yes, both of those are incredible. Almost Famous is the reason why I entered into entertainment journalism, because originally I wanted to be a music journalist.
Right.
Oh wow.
And so it kind of evolved
Cool.
into doing other stuff, but it was all William and Stillwater that really.
So yeah, it's just such a great movie.
But Roger Rabbit, Robert Zemeckis again,
Yep.
revolutionary,
Mhm.
in the technology that put animation and live action together.
Yep.
It's very rare that you see studios cooperate enough that all those characters can be in one place.
Yeah.
If you love Roger Rabbit, I highly recommend checking out the new Chip and Dale movie on
Okay.
Disney
Oh,
Plus.
that's phenomenal.
It's
I
such a
saw
good
it.
movie.
The wife and I watched it one night, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
really good.
Scope it out.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
very well
spiritual
done.
sequel for Roger Rabbit, because it does a lot of things that the original did as well, but also it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah,
I think the big thing about Back to the Future too is that as far as the time travel genre has evolved, Back to the Future is still the time travel mechanic standard that everyone
Yep.
else is held to. So I
Exactly.
think that
Absolutely.
says so much for it.
you have movies of today like Avengers Endgame and Totally Killer on Amazon Prime Video that use Back to the Future as a cultural touchstone to be
Yeah.
like, oh, you want to know how this time travel thing works? Remember in Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that it has that kind of legacy speaks to how great it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other movies that you mentioned are still talked about today and have just as passionate fandoms.
Mhm.
I mean, I constantly say, this belongs in a museum. It's
Yeah.
Right.
yesterday I sold my Indiana Jones Funko Pops, and it really pained me to do so, but I had to do it, unfortunately.
Right.
But the fact that it hurts so much to like get rid of this thing,
Mhm.
and it's kind of funny. I have a little idol on my desk,
Nice.
Oh yeah.
so I do have much love for all of those other franchises, but above and beyond is Back to the Future.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned, saying about museums all the time. we're not to throw my wife under the bus, but we are, routinely running late for things.
under the bus.
And like, we're getting ready to leave, and there's like one more thing she has to do, and I will routinely say, "No time for love, Dr. Jones." Okay. All right, awesome. So now that we've gotten all that down, we are going to take a short break while you check out this advertisement from our sponsor, Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles, and we will be back with our main event right here on Opinion City.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Introducing Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles, your ultimate destination for all things wrestling nostalgia. At Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles, they don't just sell items, they curate memories. Whether you're a fan of the classic era or modern showdowns, they've got something for everyone. Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles sells DVDs, books, magazines, action figures, and so much more. So stop on by Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles, where every piece tells a story and every fan becomes a part of the legacy. Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles is conveniently located inside Mother Tucker's Antiques and Collectibles, located at 566 North Reading Road in Ephrata, PA. Stop on by Thursday through Monday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Give them a call at 717-405-0153 or find them on social media at Ref Larry's WC. Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles is a proud sponsor of the Opinion City podcast. And now, back to the show.
All right, we're back here on Opinion City, and we want to thank Ref Larry's Wrestling Collectibles for being a proud sponsor of the Opinion City podcast. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please send us an email at opinioncitypod@gmail.com.
And with that, it is now time for our main event.
This week's main event almost kind of piggybacks off of last week's main event in a sense. Last week we had Anthony Blackwood Jr. on the show. Shout out to the ABJ podcast. He gave us his top 5 wrestlers we should know about. You're giving us top 5 wrestlers that should be on national TV. So why don't you hit us with your number 5 to start us off with?
All right. So before I get into number 5, actually, I do want to give one shout out because I didn't include them on the list only because I was confident that they would be on TV again.
Okay.
Very soon. And I was right. And I'm very that I was right about this. I'm wearing their shirt right now.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, she debuted on Impact the other day, and I freaked out. I'm not gonna lie, I freaked out a little bit.
Sunny Kiss.
He messaged me immediately.
Yeah, Sunny Kiss is a phenomenal talent.
Amazing.
Tony Khan wasted them. It was such a bummer that they were doing such great work with Joey Janela.
Yeah, that
with
was a
the
great
Trust
storyline,
Busters.
too. Yeah.
They were doing so much, and the fact that they weren't on television for the majority of their run was just so heartbreaking. So the fact that they showed up on Impact really justifies me not putting them on this list because they were going to get there no matter what.
Yep.
All right, cool.
But yeah, so I really tried to focus on performers that weren't on television currently and regularly.
Right.
So in my consideration, there were people that have shown up for one shots for special attraction matches on Dark and things like that. Like we've even talked about some of the people on my list already, like Edith Surreal. But some of the people that I didn't include in the top 5, but should most definitely be on television, just because some of the things I look for in a television performer are almost the same things I look for in like superheroes. Like they're compelling characters, they're interesting, they could add something to the product that like isn't really there currently, but also they're toyetic, they're dynamic, they're they stand out. Like I almost hate using this example, but like the airport test, if like you see someone walking through an airport and they look like they're important, and you know, like
Yeah.
if you see
Yeah.
Randy Orton walking through
Yeah.
an airport, he's a freaking world champion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's
right.
like if you see someone like Kevin Blackwood or Alex Zane walking through an airport, like they're a character, and I
Yeah.
want to see those characters on television.
Right.
And you know, the last one that I'll say before getting into number 5 is Delilah Doom.
Ooh,
Very good call.
very
The
good.
reason why I
Yeah.
didn't include her in the top 5 is because now she's in WoW Superheroes of Wrestling
Mhm.
There you
as
go.
Gloria Glitter.
Very cool.
And I think finally the world is going to get to see what she can offer the world of wrestling beyond being a squash match for Nia Jax.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I know she had a brief run on Impact also, but you know, she has a lot more that she can do. The Queen of Aerobic Style is such a fun character
Mhm.
that I think people will really gravitate towards her. But again, didn't include her just because it didn't really fit the parameters of my list.
Gotcha.
So, number 5
Let's go.
is a cheat because it's not one person, it's 3 people.
Okay.
And you know,
cheater.
I'll find some way to game the system. You know, it's
Listen,
Sure.
it's
I'll allow it.
it's your list, so it's whatever you want to be, man.
and I think Ralph is going to enjoy this selection also. And that's the Spectral Envoy.
Yeah.
The team of Hollowicked, Frightmare, and Ultramantis Black.
So good. All 3 of them separately and together. are
Exactly.
just phenomenal.
Like, I even know what division I would put them in. Like, they could thrive so much in the Ring of Honor 6-man tag division.
yeah.
You know, seeing them against the Hung Bucks, but also the Dark Order and
Mhm.
you know, the Kingdom, and like
Right.
all of those teams that are so prominently showcased on Ring of Honor right now, which is unfortunately on Honor Club and most people aren't watching, but like there's some
Yes.
really good stuff happening on that show,
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially in the multi-person divisions, you know. And I mean, just imagine the announcers talking about the broadsword of Nazmal Dune.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
They have
Oh, so
such,
good.
they have such character elements
Right.
and such lore already built up that, you know, Excalibur would have a field day talking
Yeah,
about
right.
their
Oh yeah.
talking about their success, not only in Chikara, but in Evolve, in Dragon Gate, in Ring of
Everywhere.
Honor. You know, and I mean, Hollowicked is someone who should be getting more recognition.
Absolutely.
Every single indie wrestler we talk to talks about how
Hollow
great
Wicked.
Hollow Wicked is. Most of
Yeah.
them who have wrestled him will tell you that he is like one of their favorite matches that they've had because
Yeah.
he's just a great all around person. People love him.
He really should have been one of the people who answered Cody Rhodes's open challenge for the TNT title.
Oh yeah, that
Mhm.
would have been awesome. Yeah.
I think, you know, he would have brought something very different to the table in one of those matches. And it's just his whole presentation, his in-ring ability, you know, everything about Hollowicked deserves to be seen on a bigger level. He was basically Chikara's Sting. You know, he
Yeah.
was the franchise
Yes.
player.
He really was. Like again, like Rob said, pretty much everyone that we had on the show so far had to mention him in some way, whether it was
Mhm.
favorite match, favorite wrestler, favorite opponent, favorite trainer. Like he's on everyone's list of something when it comes to
Exactly.
wrestling. Yeah.
And then to just add Frightmare and Ultramantis Black
Yeah.
is like completes the package really,
Yeah.
because like
Mhm.
all 3 of them are phenomenal wrestlers.
Mhm.
All 3 of them have great characters, and it's something that I think should be seen more on, is in particularly on American wrestling promotions. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get these masked performers that are very dynamic and very fun to watch, and it's like they're mostly imports. You know,
Yeah.
and that's definitely nothing against the CMLL people, the New Japan people,
Mhm.
even, you know, Dark Order coming from Canada. There's there are some very interesting masked wrestlers in America
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
I think could get a bigger spotlight, and that could do more than just comedy spots. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
like I don't know how it's turned into this like masked wrestler thing being kind of a kiddie thing,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know, Rey Mysterio is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and the mask goes far beyond just children.
Yeah.
Jushin
Mhm.
Thunder Liger is the same way.
Yep.
So, you know, I think that the Spectral Envoy could have a lot of traction
Mhm.
when, in American promotions, especially in AEW, but also in Impact.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put the Spectral Envoy against Crazy Steve and
Yeah.
his
Yes.
people,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and it would be wild. Okay.
So
number
three.
four.
Hold on. Three things about that quickly. Number one, I feel like Spectral Envoy versus House of Black is the feud that we never knew we needed.
Oh yes.
Now that you bring that up, number two, putting the Spectral Envoy on TV would finally give us an opportunity to find out what happened with the Eye of Tyr, because it's not
Yeah.
destroyed. We all know that.
Yep.
The screen went to black. We all know about that. The sad thing about all of that, it is my understanding that Hallowicked is happy with how things are now. Like he could be a huge superstar, but he's just happy what he's doing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But it is sad that more people don't get to see that greatness.
Yeah, it's true. But you know, his impact is certainly felt in wrestling today because of the people that he trained
Indeed.
that are continuing his legacy. So
Yeah.
But you know, hopefully, you know, I could fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
say never in wrestling, right?
Always.
Gotta be hopeful.
Yes. Okay, so my fourth entry to this list hails from Fukuoka, Japan.
Ooh.
Mhm.
She is known as the Pink Striker. This is Miyu Yamashita.
Oh.
She is just so brutal in the ring.
Mhm.
I first got to see her at Prestige Wrestling in Portland, Oregon, where it was a whole weekend of shows. So I got to see her against Maki Ito,
Nice.
Oh,
who I love, by the way. She is one of
Maki's
my
great.
favorites right now.
She's
Mhm.
great.
And the whole reason why I didn't include her on the list was because she's on AEW consistently enough, and people are constantly talking about her.
Mhm.
And now that she's on GCW, there's plenty of opportunity to see her, even though it's not like national television. But
Yeah.
I think Maki Ito gets enough spotlight without me including her on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Agreed.
though, you know, obviously you could probably count me among her fan base for
Yeah,
sure. But Miyu Yamashita had a great match with Maki Ito, showing off the Joshi style. You know, they were together in Tokyo Joshi Pro. So they have a long history and have had great matches in the past. But I got to see Miyu Yamashita versus Masha Slamovich.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was just such a hard-hitting affair.
I'm
And
sure it
obviously, Joshi wrestlers always hit hard.
was. Yeah.
And you mentioned House of Black, and no disrespect to Malachi Black, but Miyu's spinning heel kick will take a
Well,
head off.
yeah.
Yes.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, you know, you have this era of realism in wrestling right now.
Mhm.
And I feel like, you know, other than Janai Kai and Speedball Mike Bailey, like I think Miyu Yamashita is one of the most believable strikers
Yeah.
in the game right now.
Absolutely.
And she could easily reach the heights of an Io Sky, you
Mhm.
know, who also had a lot of success in Japan and finally got the chance to shine in America.
Mhm.
Miyu is just such a brutal performer, and I just love seeing it every time. And I think a lot of people, especially the crowd that comes over from like MMA, you know,
Mhm.
I think she speaks to a lot of those fans. God, just her whole presentation of like, it's almost like, hey Barbie, and then Barbie kicks you in the face.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and there's such a limited sampling size as far as Japanese female wrestlers in the mainstream today, and she would be someone I could see being perfect for like an Impact Wrestling women's division where
Yeah.
not only is she with great American female talent, but then that's a perfect lead in for New Japan on Access TV. Like
Yeah.
she's got a lot she's got a lot of marketability in that standpoint.
Oh yeah, like she could absolutely follow in the line of Bull Nakano, Asuka, Io Sky. She could be just as marketable as any of those performers.
Right.
And if it happens, when it happens, it can't happen to a better person. Like I got to meet her at the merch stand after that Prestige show, and she was just so nice.
Mm.
And you love seeing nice people
Yeah.
advance and succeed.
Yeah, nice people should get good things.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right, number 3.
Right in the middle. Let's go.
I think that Bryan Danielson would agree with me in picking number 3
Okay.
because he himself saw and has spoken about how good this wrestler is. And I am talking about the bounty hunter, Brian Keith.
Oh yeah.
Excellent pick.
Absolutely good pick.
Living in the Midwest, I got to see so many great talents come up from the entire region of the country, that just weren't making it to the coasts. And suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, Brian Keith shows up and just starts kicking ass everywhere.
Yeah.
And you got to see some of it in his match with Hangman Adam Page.
Yeah.
Like he's just this Clint Eastwood-esque Lone Ranger kind of guy, like this gunslinger coming in from all of these territories.
Right.
And he just has this aura about him.
Yeah.
And even though he was predominantly a Midwestern performer, he came from Booker T's Reality of Wrestling, and that really honed his skills. And he's become a mainstay of freelance wrestling in Chicago. But I first saw him in GCW. I was in the Carousel Room in Atlantic City, and I didn't know who he was. I was there to see Alley Catch, and just experience the Carousel Room because I've been to a lot of great wrestling venues. There are a few that I sadly missed out on, like the PWG Hall in Reseda. But I mean, I've gotten to go to the ECW Arena, Logan Square Auditorium, Rosemont Horizon. Like there are great places that I've seen wrestling. But the Carousel Room definitely ranks among them. And to see this mysterious figure walk through the curtain in his poncho and his cowboy hat with this grizzled look on his face, just so focused on ending whoever was in the ring with him.
Right.
But it's like you think he's going to wrestle a certain way. You think he's going to be like those cowboys of old, like almost like a Bradshaw,
Right.
like the Blackjacks, cowboys like that. But here he is with like technical ability, holds, moonsaults, like just such a well-rounded competitor. Like his southern grit is such a defining characteristic. But he can hang with Trey Miguel, Speedball Mike Bailey, Josh Alexander, and like I would love to see him face Bryan Danielson before he hangs it up.
That would be really cool. Yeah. he has this embodiment about him. It's just this embodiment of Texas and this embodiment of that, sort of style. It's the same reason that people gravitate towards things like Red Dead Redemption, that they would gravitate towards him. And just to see, his rise in the last couple of years. I mean, you look at last year, he was number 15 on the Black Wrestlers 500, and he jumped all the way to number 1 this year just because of, I mean, all the hype surrounding him. And just, if you are an independent wrestling fan, if you haven't seen him live, you've heard about this guy. You've heard people talk about him. He's one of those guys that I feel like, when people hear about him, they seek him out to see what he's all about and what he's doing.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a huge star wherever he ends up.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that the promotions with television realize that.
Right.
And I just see such a bright future for Brian Keith, and I hope he gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, number 2. So AEW has such an eclectic, eccentric group of talent on the roster.
Right.
But especially in the women's division that barely gets showcased.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So, that's what I mean, Opinion City, right? My biggest opinion about wrestling right now is that Tony Khan doesn't know how to book women. And it's a constant problem to only have one women's match per show.
Sure.
Especially when you're hoarding some of the greatest wrestlers, not just female wrestlers, but greatest wrestlers
in general,
in the world.
Roster, yeah.
So who better to kind of break things up and almost be like a layup for him to have someone that could operate in the men's division as well.
Okay.
So my number 2 choice is the non-binary nightmare, Max the Impaler.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He saw them at, was it LVAC?
Yeah, Max the Impaler was on Steel Stack SmackDown 2 in Bethlehem for the LVAC, and we saw Max live. And the only thing I can say about Max the Impaler, the one word that really comes to mind is just spectacle. It is the definition.
Absolutely.
It is the definition of an experience.
If you badass, just
yes.
And
if you've
scary.
Not,
and scary.
If you've not seen Max the Impaler in person, you need to see Max the Impaler, because it is just an experience like no other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't like you were saying how you don't really like fanboy much anymore. Part of being a fan is kind of the intimidation factor of approaching someone at a merch table, right? But it's like you don't want to approach Max the Impaler at the merch table because you're scared for your life.
Yeah, literally scared.
Yeah.
Scary. That's one scary person.
Oh my god.
Terrifying.
The first time I saw Max was at Rise Wrestling in Chicago. They were like they were almost like the NXT for women's wrestling.
Right.
Because their stars have gone on to headline Impact and AEW and NXT, and they're just people that have come out of Rise that are incomparable. Shotzi Blackheart had a huge run in Rise as the champion.
Yeah.
Delilah Doom was also there. Chelsea Green, Britt Baker. The list goes on, and they had a regional tournament to try to spotlight up and coming talent in women's wrestling. And one of them was a fresh competitor named Max the Impaler, and they were presented very differently, but there were inklings of what they are today.
Right.
So seeing Max evolve from that small tournament in Rise to be a part of ROH's Women of Honor division, to being a part of the NWA and
Mhm.
Progress and Pro Wrestling Eve in the UK, you know, and they even wrestled in Tokyo Joshi Pro in Japan. And so, like, from a business standpoint, Max stands out as like an instantly recognizable performer.
Yep.
When you see Max walking down the street in their full gimmick,
Yeah.
I don't see anyone else who could be a better action figure.
Yeah.
I
Right.
know.
You know, you could sell the Wasteland paraphernalia that they wear.
Yep.
Mhm.
You know,
Oh yeah.
and if you brought Max in with some of the other members of the Wasteland, like Heidi Howitzer, you know, they could dominate in the men's, women's tag divisions.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you know, I think the perfect place for her on television right now would be Impact,
Yeah.
because they're the only televised promotion that actually does intergender stuff.
Yeah.
So you could have Max versus Jordan Grace. You could have Max against Moose.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
just these hoss fights.
yeah.
You could have Max come down to the ring and slap the taste out of Bully Ray's mouth.
Absolutely.
I would love it so much.
Yeah.
That'd
Because
be great.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
people just need to slap Bully Ray sometimes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Sometimes a little slap can't hurt.
That would be an incredible match.
That would
Absolutely.
be an awesome match.
Yeah.
I have all the respect in the world for Bully Ray and the things that he did as part of the Dudley Boys. But, you know, I'm sure you guys know. Sometimes
Yeah.
he could use a good
Mhm. He
beating
has
from
his-
the wasteland.
But yeah.
He has his
You know,
moments. He does. Yeah.
Yep.
But you know, part of what made me realize that Max the Impaler is such a great talent was when I was working at Wrestling Inc. Consistently. I wrote a list of talent that Tony Khan should sign to AEW's roster immediately.
Right.
Mhm.
And I had to revise the list because Tony Khan listened to me finally and signed a number of the people that I mentioned on the list.
He
Yeah.
somehow heard you from all the way over in his office.
Exactly. So
It happens.
so when I revised the list and had to take off people like oh man, I almost called him Dante Fox, AR Fox. I quickly plugged in Max the Impaler because it became obvious
Yeah.
that such a performer with such a great look, with such great, you know, classic big man qualities.
Yeah.
You know, you could totally see like a Diesel or like a Big Cass like
Right.
type
Mhm.
of aura
Yeah.
around them, but also, you know, the heavy hitting, the brutality, the all of it, you know.
Yeah.
Just Max the Impaler has such has such potential.
Yeah.
So
That's a
the
great word.
fact that they are really honing their craft and
Mhm.
really like zeroing in on what makes them special and what makes them stand out. I think it's
Yeah.
only a matter of time before someone picks them up and gives them a title. You know,
Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, it's not going to happen soon, but it would be awesome to see Max the Impaler versus Rhea Ripley.
Yeah.
hmm
Have
Right.
her beat down Dom Mysterio and then take on Mommy.
Yeah.
hmm So, you know, let's say we've got TNA wrestling coming back in 2024. So let's say
I'm so
we've
excited
got
for that.
you know,
Yeah.
Jordan Grace goes over at the Hard to Kill show in 2024, and during the celebration, out comes Max.
Yeah. Right.
Just you know, perfect moments like that. It would be so cool.
Yes.
And you know, we'd be looking right back to this podcast and going, you know what, we talked about this.
Yeah.
I won't guarantee it because 99% of the things I guarantee on this show
Yeah.
don't
It doesn't
happen.
happen.
So I won't guarantee it. But that's there's great opportunities like that out there.
Absolutely. And Scott D'Amore has a great eye for up and coming talent.
Mhm.
So if Max isn't on Scott's radar already, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
And
All right.
so we've come to the number one
What is your
spot
number
on the
one
list.
spot?
All right. I'm excited for this.
And
Same.
and this was hard because there's a lot of really great veteran performers who bring up a locker room, who's just raises morale, who's great to have around,
Right.
and is not only a great hand but a great mind. And I could have easily put someone like Matt Cross in this position also. I could have put Gringo Loco in this position also. Both of them are veterans who deserve their time to shine. And I think they, to a certain level, they do, especially because Gringo Loco had that phenomenal match against Ray Phoenix on AEW, and
Right.
people started to notice him finally.
Yeah.
And Matt Cross had that great run in Lucha Underground. So because they're getting these chances, I didn't put them on this list. And I almost didn't include my pick because they were on television so recently.
Right.
But the fact that he was released was such an injustice, not only because of his talent and his abilities, but because he was a mainstay as part of NXT. He was coming up into this main event spot, and now we don't get it because of these ridiculous releases. And I am, of course, talking about Mustafa Ali.
Yeah, dude, when he was on the list recently, I was shocked because they had him going up against Dom at No Mercy for the North American title, and from what I heard, he was going to win the belt.
Yep.
So I don't know what happened between when they released him and the match, but they already had him booked for a big segment just to say, okay, goodbye.
According to the reports that I've read, there was something about main roster money in NXT.
Right.
And, I don't think they were going to let go of Baron Corbin,
No.
or Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza,
No.
because they were investing so much in them. So Dana Brooke kind of made sense.
Yeah.
But the fact
point.
that Shawn Michaels didn't immediately scoop up Mustafa Ali for an NXT contract. I mean, obviously, Mustafa deserves the main roster money.
Absolutely.
And to have him be a free agent and move from show to show to show would have been an asset for them.
Absolutely.
But, with this new acquisition by Endeavor to form TKO,
Yep.
there were going to be cuts, and I didn't think there would be as many cuts as there were from main roster talent. And so it was really disappointing because Mustafa Ali is the type of person that just instantly brings up your show, no matter how much they misused him. A lot of people come down on Retribution as a group, and yes, their run was not great. However, if they had just let Mustafa Ali cut the promos that he cut on social media about Retribution and their ridiculous names,
right,
it would have worked. If you haven't seen this promo, Ali basically talks about how people have this perception of him, because of his culture, because of his ethnic background. And he's had to endure, name calling and, all of these things. And it's a very relatable experience for any, any non-white American, I especially resonated with it, because the area of Philadelphia that I grew up in was predominantly white Irish Catholic, white Italian Catholic. So, I got every name in the book. So when Ali introduced Slapjack and Reckoning and Mace, he had good reasons for giving them ridiculous names.
Yeah.
Because he wanted their talents to shine.
Right.
And now they do. Masse was great in the Maximum Male Models.
I love Maximum Male Models.
Michin Mia Yim is now part of one of the biggest factions in all of wrestling.
Right.
Because I still consider the OC part of the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
Even though David Finlay probably doesn't. But, and even seeing Shane Haste back with TMDK, all of the people in Retribution had insane skills.
Yeah.
So the fact that he justified those dumb names and the masks.
Yeah.
He had good
Mhm.
reasons for all of it, but you never heard it because it wasn't on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that you almost had him win Money in the Bank
Yeah.
only to get squashed by Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
Like that was more of a hindrance than a help. Brock
Yeah.
didn't need it,
Yeah.
you know, but they just had Ali squashed for no good reason. He
And
also,
if he had not gotten injured, we wouldn't have Kofi Mania like we do now.
yep,
Apparently, that was supposed to be his spot.
exactly.
He got injured, and
Yeah.
it was Kofi who, got that spot instead.
Yep,
Mhm.
100%. And you know, the most disappointing fact and figure of Mustafa Ali's entire WWE run is that he never won a championship.
Nope.
And that's just I don't mean to downplay anyone who's won titles in WWE, but Dana Brooke has more championships in WWE than
Yeah.
Mustafa Ali.
That's a very
Yeah.
unfortunate,
You know,
unfortunate fact right there.
it is, and you know
Yeah.
that's not a knock on Dana. That's a knock on the creative
Yeah.
behind WWE, because you could have
Yeah.
put Ali in any spot against any of the mid card champions.
Yeah.
You could have put him in a tag team. There were numerous opportunities to give him the stage that he deserves and rightfully earned, really.
Mhm.
And he could be a main event player for any promotion that gives him the time and puts in the effort to give him the resources to give the presentation that he wants to do.
Right.
You know, before going to WWE and being, you know, such a fixture in the 205 Live and the cruiserweight division,
Right.
he was the face of freelance wrestling in Chicago. He was everywhere on the indies, just showing off his incredible skills.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he could be a main event player now that he has this WWE experience. He could be a main event player in Impact, in AEW, even if Billy Corgan picks him up for NWA. If
Yeah, 'cause
MLW,
they've got big things coming up, and
Yep.
MLW is, you know, really very big in the scene right now. So there's a lot of opportunities for companies like that could use, because I feel like he's a very creative mind for wrestling. I know there were some times where he had, you know, taken to Twitter to talk about where, you know, he had these creative ideas that he just wasn't allowed to run with. And, you know, like when you look at why did the Nexus do well, but Retribution didn't do well? Well, because the Nexus was allowed to have a mouthpiece, and the Nexus was allowed to have a program with you know, a big name star, and those things just weren't afforded to Retribution, where
Yep.
Retribution could have had just as well of a run, you know, as the Nexus did, but they weren't given the opportunity. And really, to your point, it was more Mustafa Ali was not given the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, it's a shame, you know, like on the main roster, he wasn't able to carry out his character that was almost like a politician, you know, when he was going for the US title.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So when he got to do it to a certain extent in NXT, you know, he was starting to like really talk about, you know, his campaign for the North American title. And, you know, I love Trick Williams. Trick Williams is great. And it's awesome that he won the title. But I just feel like if Mustafa Ali won the North American title, the roof would have came off the place.
Absolutely. It would have
Mhm.
went
Oh, yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Because not only would he have deserved it, but it would have been a great match.
Yep.
Because you saw hints of it in the multi-man matches that he had. And, you know, he still didn't get that one-on-one match for that championship
Nope.
after he earned it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I like Dragon Lee, but why was he on Raw fighting for that title before
Yeah.
Mustafa Ali had a chance?
Yep.
Yeah, and then, there's so many, this is the classic example of what we call a missed opportunity on this
Yep.
show, and there was just missed opportunity after missed
Keeps
opportunity.
going back to Honus.
I would say he's a victim of, what I kind of like to call the curse of the Cruiserweight Classic, because I don't think after the Cruiserweight Classic they've really done anything of any substance with anybody from that Cruiserweight Classic in WWE. I mean,
Yeah.
Tommaso Ciampa had a great run on NXT, but then they sent him to the main roster where it's just been nothing.
Yeah.
So
And
guys they don't know what to do stuff with, when these are talented guys that if they just took a minute to listen to them, maybe they'd understand that there's more to them than just kind of flipping around. And
absolutely.
That's
Luckily, Vince McMahon is no longer in the driver's seat creatively.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so we're seeing more things out of people like Drew Gulak,
Yeah.
Philadelphia represent.
yeah,
Go Phils.
heck yeah,
It just
point,
made me
baby.
it just made me think of that because Drew was wearing his Phillies boots on NXT this week.
Yeah.
But Drew Gulak and Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali were all people that could have thrived had Triple H been in charge from the get-go.
Yeah.
And Vince just put the cruiserweights on such a back burner that oh god, when he brought in Enzo,
Yeah.
like at least it put the cruiserweights like in a prominent position.
Yeah.
With things unfolded with Enzo as they did, and you don't want to attach your horse to that carriage.
Yeah,
Austin Aries ended up being the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that every opportunity that the cruiserweight division had to really grow and expand and be spotlighted were just fronted by the wrong people, because they weren't Vince McMahon's vision of who should be, even TJ Perkins, obviously who's not who's let me down in a number of ways. But he was the first cruiserweight champion of that era, and the fact that he just got pushed to the side at the time was so disappointing. So now that Ali's time was coming in NXT, and the fact that we didn't get to experience it is such a huge disappointment, and as you said, a missed opportunity. So if someone like Scott D'Amore or Court Bauer picks him up, they better realize his potential, because he needs that rocket, and rightfully deserves that rocket to just go straight to the top of the card. And I'll give MLW credit for spotlighting these untested performers almost. I'm not saying that she's untested, because she's a very good competitor, and I love the Sea Stars. But Delmi Exo as a singles performer with the women's title, genius. It ended up working out really well. Right. She's a great ambassador for that company, even though things played out the way they did. She can grow and evolve from just having that belt and being in the ring with people like Taya Valkyrie.
And even since moving on from the tag team scene, she kind of mired around in this singles career for a while with really no real spotlight on her, and all it took was, like you said, somebody like the Court Bauer to take a chance on her and shine that spotlight on her, and look what she's done.
Yep. And Shawn Michaels was doing that for Mustafa Ali, and it's just sad that we can't see that to fruition. But also the great matches that he had with Cedric Alexander as part of 205 Live, the great matches he had with almost everyone. There is not a Mustafa Ali match that was disappointing. It was always a spectacle, especially when he pulled out the 054, with everything in his arsenal. I think he should be a world champion again, because he held the numerous titles on the indies, but the fact that he never had a WWE championship will always be disappointing. So hopefully Triple H can get him back one day. But until then, everybody better take advantage of it. I want to see every indie promoter booking him. Not
He-
only
He
because
needs
of
to go the Matt Cordona route and just go
Absolutely.
everywhere and do everything.
Yep. But even if he takes the Chris Hero route, he's a great mind to have backstage
Mm,
to
sure.
help cultivate new talent, to help book your shows, to do
Right.
everything. Like he deserves to be the face of a company, but like if you're using him in a backstage capacity, that's just as good too.
Sure.
I want the world for Mustafa Ali, and he deserves it.
Time will tell. Listen, it's like you said earlier, the future's not been written, and we just got to have hope that somebody thinks the way that we do.
Yes. Also, someone in California better book Mustafa Ali so I can see him in
Yeah.
person again.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I
No, I
want
gotcha.
to get my Mustafa Ali action figure signed.
Yes.
So.
I completely understand. All right. Well, that was a phenomenal top 5 you brought us. Definitely some great discussions on some great talent. Hopefully, the future is the future, and let's hope that these people get the looks that they deserve. So, all right. Before we wrap things up here, let's talk about some upcoming events.
Let's go.
All right. So we're back with some upcoming events. So let's start with you, Ben. What kind of stuff you got going on?
Well, so my podcast, Time to Party, has been on a bit of a hiatus. Because it was hard to kind of find time to podcast while moving and getting
Sure.
settled in a new place.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, so we're coming back with a vengeance very shortly. We've already had some recording sessions, on the books. So, we'll be getting back to business as usual with Time to Party coming soon. And you can read my work at all the various places I write for. Currently tomsguide.com is where a lot of my work is residing. But I'm all over the place because now I'm really hitting that freelance grind hard.
Nice.
Thanks to a lot of changes in the entertainment journalism field.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because all these corporations want quick, fast, instead of good quality and AI stuff. But
Unfortunately,
there's a whole podcast that could be talked about.
Yeah.
I could talk to you for a whole other hour just of those things.
I'm sure.
I don't want to be super negative or anything, but
Right.
and I mean, this isn't anything that I'm involved in other than being a fan of it, but I just wanted to shout it out because Prestige Wrestling is bringing Tokyo Joshi Pro to Los Angeles.
Nice. That's cool.
And
cool.
and Miyu Yamashita and Taya Valkyrie and just so many great wrestlers are on this card. And the show is happening in December. So if you're in the LA area, I highly recommend getting tickets to this show because it's gonna be a slobber knocker.
Yeah.
Awesome. And if people want to reach out to you, you are on social media, correct?
Yes, I am on Instagram, X. I hate saying X. I always end up saying Twitter, but
Yeah, me too.
Instagram, X, Threads, Blue Sky, all those good things. You can find me at bsilverio20.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So Sean, next week is a big week for us here.
A huge week. I think I'm the most excited for next week.
Yeah.
And I mean, just in general, the rest of the year, but just next week, we have the Cyberhawks 2000, the reuniting, if you will. They came back at LVA Steel Stack SmackDown 2, which we saw live. That was really cool. And for the first time ever, and Rachel's told us this for proof, this is the first time that they will all be under one interview at the same time.
Yeah, all three
so it's a
on the
huge
podcast.
Get. Yeah, so that's going to be our Opinion CD After Dark episode because that's going to be at 9:30 p.m. Sunday night.
Yeah,
late night show.
And then what happens after that? What's going on in November?
This is
get it out there, man.
For a long time.
Get it out there.
Opinion City will present the Monster Factory series. We are pretty sure going to be pushing out the Monster Factory. They are a training facility out of Paulsboro, New Jersey. Their show is on Apple TV. If you haven't watched it yet, please do it. It's amazing. We have the coach and owner himself, Danny Cage, will be on. We have the classiest wrestler in Monster Factory, Max Sterling, will be on. We will have the arena champion, Xander Alexander, on the show, and as well as the newly crowned Body Snatchers, the MFPW World Tag Team Champions, being Marvelous and the God of Dad Bod. That's going to be just an amazing month of fun. And afterwards, we even have December booked. Right, Ralph? What do we got going on in December?
We've got a bunch of stuff going on in December. We've got Mr. Ruda is going to be joining us the first week in December. We're following that up with Billy Avery, who's going to be on to talk about Labor of Love Philly. And third week in December, we've got our good friend from the Buffalo area, Puff, is an amazing wrestler. You're not going to want to miss out on that.
Amazing.
And we've got a very special episode coming for Christmas. We are doing the episode is entitled "We Wish You a Dirtbag Christmas," as we present our Christmas episode with our guest Dirtbag Dan.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
We've got something special for New Year's. We don't want to let out any of the details just yet, but
not yet.
Keep watching. We've got a big show planned for New Year's as well. So great upcoming events all around.
Stacked.
And
stacked.
So Ben, thanks for joining us this week. It was great, letting our listeners get to know a little bit about you, and it's been great getting a chance to talk about wrestling again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be looking out. Yeah, we'll be looking out for the return of Time to Party, and we'll make sure we let all our listeners know when that's back. So we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. So let's go ahead and wrap things up here. It's been a great episode, and we want to thank all of our listeners for listening to the Opinion City podcast with myself and Parmesan. So if you like what you just heard, we hope you'll follow us on social media at Opinion City Pod, and please tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, complete strangers, people at the grocery store. If you're bored, go online and tell Ben's top 5 indie wrestlers that you want to see on TV about Opinion City. And please like, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And be sure to check out our previous episodes and let us know your opinions on those episodes, as well as this week's topic. Check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, not X, Instagram, Threads, all the places at Opinion City Pod. This has been a Mancast Network production, and we will see you next time.
This is also Ann here. You're listening to Opinion City Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Happy